From mindfulness perspective, there is no path to happiness, because happiness is the path. And if you think about what I said about happiness earlier, to be happy now predicts happiness in the future, or to be well now will predict your well-being in the future. That would make perfect sense, right? But that's research. So, and mindfulness really focuses on that. It's not a new invention, though. All major religions in the world had traditions and practices that foster mindfulness. Something like chanting, prayers, even singing fosters mindfulness. Such activities as dance, from Maori perspective, haka would be something where you can experience mindfulness. Essentially, everything where you can be, these are all tools to be in the present moment. If you will be focusing in the present moment, there are some activities you cannot think about anything. Playing music, playing piano, a complex thing. There is no way you can think about past or future. You have to be there and now. And the same is with singing. You cannot sing, you will be singing wrong in terms of tone. You need to be in time. You need to be in the present. So there are some activities which help to be mindful. But unfortunately, we get distracted with something else. Also, I want to say that the term, how we use mindfulness now these days, in psychology in particular, was never used that way before. People use different words to describe that, but it's a kind of a secular way to understand the phenomena. So the definition what was proposed by John Kabat-Zinn, who actually introduced mindfulness to the Western world as such, based from different traditions, in particular from Buddhist practices. Mindfulness, how he defined it, was like the awareness that emerges through paying attention on purpose in the present moment and non-judgmentally to the unfolding of experiences moment by moment. So what it really means is not the attention by itself, but awareness that emerges from attention. Awareness is something, it's a bigger thing. If you talk about awareness, it's really hard to explain because we cannot see our awareness. We cannot touch it. It doesn't have color or shape. But we know that awareness is always there. And once you start paying attention to the present moment, you will get something like awareness. Awareness like can be compared to a mirror that reflects everything what we are experiencing, but not affected by it. Awareness is not affected by it. Our cognition does, but not the awareness. Awareness is always there. Awareness is also can be compared to a crystal. When you can put a crystal on different color, it can change the color. You can roll it. But if you put it on a black background, it becomes black, but it's not changing by itself. So awareness is something what we share in common. And my awareness is not different from your awareness. So everybody, the awareness component of every creature is the same. Our cognition is different. Our bodies are different. Things are different. But awareness component, what we have, is something which is there, and we can experience it by doing practice. When we pay attention to the present moment, we are also aware about other things happening, about other people being there, for example. Yesterday, I looked at my cat going on a path from the house up. And if I looked in the window on my cat feels actually on that distance, feels that somebody is looking at him, stop, something wrong, I don't know how it does that. And it's a question which science cannot answer these days. I don't know how they feel it, but they feel somebody watching them. That is very interesting. And I guess the cat has that awareness, and that awareness kind of is sensitive to my awareness. You can put it that way. So anyway, that means that there are many things open for research, for the future research, for you to do. I will move on with mindfulness. So I would start with the effectiveness of mindfulness-based interventions. In 2019, just before COVID, we written that book, which summarized the literature on mindfulness. And if you want to have a copy of my book, I think you put it online. Is it online? The whole book? Just a link to that. Or a link to the chapter. Okay, if you want to have the whole book, just email me, I can send you the whole book. So it will be a gift. So anyway, mindfulness-based interventions were effective for enhancement of well-being and for the treatment of different mental health conditions, including anxiety, chronic stress, depression, emotional instability, substance abuse, post-traumatic stress disorder, psychophysiological disorders like pain is one of them, and suicidal self-harm behavior. Of course, there are more of that. This is just a list to give you a bit of examples where mindfulness is applied. We applied mindfulness practices in disability sector and also on serious mental health conditions. So basically, if we talk about mindfulness, there are two stages of training. Focused attention is a preliminary training of mindfulness. And the focused attention, you need just to choose an object. It could be anything. It could be a picture, what I have here. It could be a candle. You can look at the light, or you can focus on your breath, which is always with you. We just follow the flow of the breath and try to not to be distracted. You see when your body really inhales and exhales, because the breath is not a voluntary process. If you don't think about it, you do something else, your body will still do it. So the body looked after it, because fortunately we have autonomic nervous system taking care of the breath. But if we focus on the breath, we unite with our body. We are not somewhere else with our thoughts, so we will be there in the present. It is kind of helps you to be in the present. And what you will notice if you do that practice properly, you will notice that what body does, when an inhale, it stops at some stage. And you see there is a gap between inhale and exhale when the neurons switching on another operation. And an exhale goes to a certain point and stop again. There are sort of gaps between inhale and exhale. Once you start focusing on breath, your system, your nervous system naturally return to the state of balance. It just needs a time. For somebody, it takes just a few minutes. For somebody, it takes half an hour. But doing that practice for about 20 minutes a day will make a difference. It's a simple practice, but it is a very important practice. You need to build, it's kind of building up. It's not happy, the changes are not happening very quickly. You need to train on that. So every psychologist who is practicing mindfulness should be doing practice. So if you do that, if your mind wanders away, what usually happens when you just start, then you just, once you remember, you return to your breath again. And you keep going like that. Once you get distracted with thoughts, you remember, oh, I should do practice. You go back. With the time, these periods of distraction will be less, and the focus period will be longer. At certain moment, at certain time, you will be able to sit for 20 minutes and practice. It doesn't matter how you sit. Some people sit cross-legged, some sit on a chair, some sit in a comfortable place, the way they like. But the idea is once you do that, it narrows your attention focus, and it accumulates, which is called state mindfulness, to be mindfulness now. And state leads to trait mindfulness. Trait is predisposition to be mindful across different conditions. So you need to generalize that meditation practice to different circumstances. So you can actually practice whatever you do. If you are in a bus or driving a car, I'm driving a car, I'm practicing. I'm talking to people, I'm practicing. You practice all the time, basically. But to build that, you need to build this small moments first and then expand it. So the next stage, once you're proficient with focused attention and can do it for a long time, you do open monitoring. Open monitoring is naturally arising from being focused on something. It comes naturally. And gradually, what it means, you gradually widen or shift your perspective to awareness, to be aware of different things simultaneously. And then focus on monitoring your awareness instead of anything else. And with attitude of acceptance without reactivity or judgment. If things are coming, you don't judge them, you let them to be as they are, because this is what their natural way. You cannot change things by judging them. You can change things by doing something. So there's no point to judge things. Okay, stay in monitoring state. Be attentive and to experiences that may arise without selection, judgment, or focus on particular experience. So if you focus on particular experience, it sidetracks you from the flow of experiences, basically. And this results in enhanced attentional focus and awareness at the same time, and strengthening your trait mindfulness to be mindful across different circumstances. So you may be practicing this, you may notice things you never notice usually. You notice some, for example, some waypoints on a color on a wall, or some signs which you always miss by driving at that place. It's very interesting how things start popping up. You will see environment a little bit more detailed and will be more sensitive to change in the environment. Actually switching from automatic mode, which we're using often when we do things repetitively, switching to manual mode, where your perception will be much more detailed and rich. The idea, an example of practice would be to considering all our perceptions, sensations, and thoughts as like bubbles. Earlier days, I brought actually a bubble machine to a lecture set and put it, and it made bubbles. Or ask somebody from the some of students making bubbles. So bubbles are very beautiful, right? They appear, but they are not live for a long time. And you can watch them floating across the space and disappearing again. The same idea, all our experiences are like bubbles. On a big scale, the whole life is a bubble which appears, goes, and disappears again at a certain stage. So if you think, if you see that way, you will be in the present moment quite naturally. So bubbles are a good example for the practice. And you know what's the significance of a bubble is only in that moment when it is there. Because it will not be there for a long time. It will be there for a few seconds, maybe a minute at the longest. So now I want to look at some practices, what we're using in mindfulness. So mindfulness-based practices, which are very basic, single component, light touch methods. These methods we're using with, in particular for children and young adults with autism spectrum disorder, with ADHD, and with ADD as well. So, in particular problems, what we have with children with these conditions is actually emotional control, in particular controlling anger, and dealing with verbal and physical aggression. These are the major problems. But of course, these methods are not originated or created for that purpose. These methods are working for everybody the same way. They just, we were using them in the studies for this population. They were effective, even for this population for people with these conditions, but they work for everybody. These are sort of very basic practices. Okay, I will start with the first one. The one of the practices, we published a few papers on that applying this method. It is called Soles of the Feet practice. And we also taught that to psychologists. There are many psychologists following this methodology. Like we were teaching psychologists in Singapore applying these methods. I will read the instructions. If you are standing, stand in a natural rather than an aggressive posture with the soles of your feet flat on the floor. If you are sitting, sit comfortably with the soles of your feet flat on the floor. Breathe naturally and do nothing. Cast your mind back to an incident that made you very angry. We all have these incidents, right? Anything makes us angry at some times. And stay with the anger. You are feeling angry, and angry thoughts are flowing through your mind. Let them flow naturally without restriction. Stay with the anger. Your body may show signs of anger, rapid breathing, heart rate increasing. That's what you will notice for sure. Now shift your attention fully to the soles of your feet. Slowly move your toes. Feel your shoes covering your feet. Feel the texture of your socks, the curve of your arch, and the heels of your feet against the back of your shoes. If you don't have shoes, your shoes on, feel the floor or carpet with the soles of your feet. Keep breathing naturally and focus on soles of your feet until you feel calm. It takes a while when you do it. And at some stage, you feel calm again. Practice this mindfulness exercise until you can use it wherever you are and whenever an incident occurs that may otherwise lead to you being verbally or physically aggressive. So this is not for specific disorders only. This is a very good practice to know because that can help you in stressful situations. This can even be helpful in stressful situations if you feel anxiety before a class test or something like that. That will work for you as well. So it works for any excessive emotional responses which we may experience, having anxiety. In this case, it is applied for anger because anger was the dominant problem with certain populations, but we all experience these emotions, and that is extremely helpful. Here, the evidence. Think 2011. Adolescents with autism spectrum disorders can use mindfulness based strategy to control aggressive behavior. If you look at that, we use single subject design here. And the single subject design means that a person, it's an individual, it's its own control. So we're basically measuring them starting at different time points to ensure that there is no time effect. So it's not something in a time. And we use a baseline assessment where we don't do any instructions. We just measure behavior at that moment. And then we do an intervention and see what's happened after the intervention. And you can see gradually, this is the incidence, the graphs show an incidence of, in this case, number of aggressive incidents overall at the baseline were very high for all three individuals with the peaks. The names what we give in behavioral studies typically are pseudonyms. They are not the real names for confidentiality reasons. We have John, Paul, and George here. And you can see that after a while, we did that study. The training by itself was just 5 days. 15-minute session, altogether 1 hour and 15 minutes. And collected data over 30 weeks. That is on the graph. See, that's 30 weeks here. After 30 weeks, the aggressive behavior was almost at zero rate. So there were no incidents of aggression anymore. And we followed up for 4 years, these 3 individuals. And you can see this as the years data on the right side, follow up. There are flat lines. So this, what greater you can get in terms of the results. And it is working on an individual level. It's not a group data, which is quite unique because you can tailor the intervention for an individual. Another practice, also equally effective, but slightly different. It is called sober breathing space. SOBR stays for stop, observe, breathe, expand, and response. So the stop, whatever you are doing, at the first instance you feel anger rising, or at the first thought of being verbally or physically aggressive. Observe the changing sensations in your mind and body. Pay close attention to the thoughts, feelings, emotions, and physical changes that accompany the raising anger or aggression. You look actually where it's happened, what's happened with the body. You investigate. Then breathe, redirect your attention to your breath, and take a few breaths until your attention is centered on your breath. This is the practice I talked at the very beginning, where you just follow your breath and try to pick up those gaps between inhale and exhale. So then expand. Expand means expand your awareness and examine the possible consequences of being angry or aggressive. How would it make you feel when you are angry? When you hurt someone's feeling, so through verbal aggression, when you see that your physical aggression has caused pain to another person, how would you feel if you were on the other person's shoes? I always say to my son, it's really hard to teach younger children, like 7, 6 years old. He's 10 now. Now he's much better with that. But in an earlier age, it's really hard if he says something. I say, what do you think would happen if somebody does it to you? If somebody hurt him in the school, you say, oh, I should do something. I say, no, you don't respond, because you wouldn't like if somebody does it to you. You always need to reverse. In psychology, we call it theory of mind. Are you familiar with that concept? To look at something from other person's perspective. So you actually exchange your perspective with other person and look what other person will feel in that situation. And this is here, it's the key here to understand that, what other person will feel. And then you respond. You respond mindfully to the situation instead of reacting mindlessly. Remind yourself that how you respond is your choice and yours alone. You have the choice to respond mindfully or continue with an old habit of being verbally or physically aggressive. That is also another way of dealing with emotional issues. What we did, we applied that for 4 children with intellectual disabilities, 2 12 years old, 10 and 11. That is exactly that age. Aggressive behavior, what they exhibited was kicking, slapping, punching, beating, and pinching with mixed motivation. So if you look at the first week, 3 times 1 hour training sessions, only 3 sessions, 1 hour. Weeks 2 and 4, the sessions was only 2 sessions, 30 minutes each per week. So 2 days in a week, 30 minutes each. And total training time of 6 hours. Again, collected data for 30 weeks and follow up for 1 year. Here are the graphs. Here we have graphs of home and school, because you need to collect behavioral data at home and at school. Sometimes children can be aggressive at home, but not aggressive at school, or other way around, more often in school, but not at home. So you need to collect data at both. And you can see that the first 2, Donald and John, had high level of verbal aggression at home and at school. But to others, I think Ted and Marco, they have very low incidence at home. There was no verbal aggression at home, but it was higher in school. So, but anyway, by 30 days, there is a very strong reduction to nearly zero rate, and follow-up shows also a very low rate of occurrence. In one, for example, in Donald, you still have a little bit, but we call it, from behavioral perspective, it is called extinction, essentially, of the unwanted behavior. So this is also a very convincing result. Then we also have physical aggression for the same children. With the physical aggression, it is almost eliminated. Also on both at home and in school. And also there is a difference what they did at home and in school. You can see obviously at school more physical aggression for all 4 children, but only for 2 was really a problem at home. This is an evidence, but that is working. And one more practice I want to introduce, which is great for all sorts of things we may suffer from. Yeah? Pardon? No, this is behavioral analysis, where ABA is a different technique. The control group is the person itself. And behavioral analysis, the person is its own control. So what you do, you collect data on a baseline on an individual. You don't do any intervention. You just measure the behavior over a week or 2 weeks' time until it's stable. So you see what is the maximum, what is the minimum. You're absolutely sure that this is a range. It will never go below, for example, 5. It will never go above 10. You know, 5 to 10 is the baseline. And against that is your control. You apply intervention and you see whether it changes, right? That is a control. So every individual is its own control as well. And that is the most robust way to show the difference, where it works for that individual. It's quite different from quantitative research, because I'm teaching quantitative research methods. And randomized controlled trials are a good thing for a population. But this is for working with individuals. It provides very strong individual evidence for a difference, whether it works or not. So behavioral methods are slightly different to the, let's say, mainstream randomized control trials, which we are doing as well. So the one I want to read you now is surfing the urge. That is a wonderful practice. At all time, be mindful of arising urges. When you detect an urge arising, focus on places in your body where the urge is present. Except, for example, dryness of your mouth, anticipatory salivation for food, sensations in the abdomen, tightness or heaviness in the chest, and notice its intensity. Be present for the urge. Observe it with non-judgmental awareness. Cradle it without attachment. And remember that it is transient. It will change. It is not permanent. Once you know that, that makes things easier. Bring your attention to your breath without changing the flow, speed, or length of each breath. So you let your breath to be as it is and just follow it. Use your breath as a surfboard to ride the urge as it flows through your arising, gaining strength, peaking in intensity, and then dissolving. Surf the urge for a minute or 2. You know, it's like a wave. You want to do something. Your body wants to push. You want to scratch, for example, a hand. Or you want to bite a nail. That's where it works perfectly for all these bad habits we may have. And you just observe that, and it's like a wave. It goes in intensity. It goes up, 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 and picking up. At some stage, wave reaches its highest point, and then start collapsing and going down. And it's gone, and you don't see it. It's just a sea there. So that's the same thing as here with all our emotions and urges, whatever we experience in the body or in our thoughts. So anyway, so what you do at this case, serve the urge for a minute or two, shift your attention back to the places in your body where the urge was initially present, and observe transformation taking place, reduction in the feeling and sensations associated with the urge. Return to the breath and observe the urge until it is fully dissolved. So you go to the breath, follow the breath until the urge is gone entirely. Show gratitude to yourself for being present for the urge without giving into it. Smile and mentally note that you responded according to your intentions and did not react to the urge by going back to your old habits. This can apply, this has applications across many different things which we want to manage what we think are dysfunctional. So we also use that for 3 adolescents with autism spectrum disorder, age 16 and 2 17s. Target behavior was verbal and physical aggression in this case. Training spread over 2 weeks. The effect size that we calculate at a statistical robustness, it shows how strong is the effect. The effect size is large for verbal aggression and moderate to large for physical aggression. All 3 were taken off their psychotropic medication prescribed for physical aggression. These kids had psychotropic medication which suppresses actually will and aggression. It suppresses the brain activity in that and physical activity overall. It's quite a heavy stuff that is used for people who are very aggressive. So we took the medication away and trained them. So these are the graphs. You can see on the left side we have verbal aggression, and on the right side physical. So you can see that verbal aggression goes to almost 0 with only a CAM still with incidents, and physical aggression as well. What we found generally in this study is that it's easier to eliminate physical aggression than verbal aggression. With verbal aggression, you still have a residual. It can be, which is called in behavioral science, spontaneous recovery. Once you stop intervention with some time, if there is a trigger, it can go up again. But usually, if you remind a child about instructions and practice, they usually go back and they do very well. So motivation is very important here as well. So now we come to what you asked me about groups and control groups, randomized control trials. These are the formal mindfulness-based practices, something like mindfulness-based stress reduction in MBSR, MBCT, mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, MBEAT, mindfulness-based eating awareness training, mindfulness-based relapse program, and mindfulness-based positive behavioral support. And there are also other programs like DBT and ACT, but dialectical behavior therapy from Marsha Linehan and ACT, these are using mindfulness as a component, but their main focus is not on mindfulness. They have also other components in the training, but all those in the blue square and in the blue box, they all pure mindfulness approaches. This is heavy duty stuff with groups and control groups and experimental groups running for 8 weeks, and then a battery of different measures, including depression, anxiety, stress, well-being. Usually it's a battery of different variables we are measuring, including mindfulness. These are sort of large-scale approaches. The one MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction, was developed by John Kabat-Zinn, and the original version of that program was about 8 to 10 weeks long, with 10 to 30 participants in a group. And They meet together weekly for sessions between 2 and 2.5 hours with one full day retreat or workshop or practice. Outside the class, the requirement was quite high to meditate for about 45 minutes every day. You can split it into sessions, morning and evening. But it's a strong commitment. One of the major goals of that program was to foster non-judgmental attitude and focus on the present moment. People develop a habit of observing content of their thoughts without being involved into them, without judging them, and return attention to the present moment. It's basically to be observer in a relaxed way. So talking about effectiveness of MBSR, it has studied more than any other mindfulness-based practices. There are so many studies on MBSR in terms of effectiveness. It was demonstrated to be effective to reduce symptoms of depression, chronic pain, coping with cancer, pain and cancer, psychological suffering while having cancer, heart disease, also improvement with people with heart disease, and also for general population with no specific problems, just increasing well-being and health. However, meditation is as more than relaxation. If you start doing that, you will know that. In patients with chronic pain, the goal is not to strive to reduce pain, but to observe sensations and emotions as they happen in the moment. Once you start doing that, pain will go down by itself. So you don't need to, pain reduction is a side effect. And the famous saying goes, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. I had an accident on Mount Ruapehu myself a few years ago. And my son was 6 years old, and he wanted to jump on a hill. And I thought, I said, hey, wait, I will test it myself first, then you go. And I was too, the speed was too high on ski. I was too fast. And I didn't know what is behind it. And I jumped, and I realized I'm about 5 meters up in the air. And the problem is, for landing, I could land if it would be flat, but it was like that. And when I started landing, my ski were like, bump. And I hurt my face on the surface. It was icy. It was a bit of blood. I didn't realize how much it is. I put my ski, my son is coming, how are you? I said, oh, I'm fine, okay, no problem, but you shouldn't do that. You see what's happened to me, you shouldn't do that. He was very convinced by this example because, you know, how otherwise you can show 6 years old that something they shouldn't do? That was a very good to stop him actually trying it. I was happy with that. And it was a bit of blood. I put the snow there. Snow works very well, you know. And he said, oh, I said, we probably need to go. He said, oh, no, it's such a nice weather and the snow. Let's go and ride one more time. I said, okay, let's go. And we went and people were around. They said, oh, you have blood there. I said, I know, no problem. And we did a few more rides. And then I said, probably we need to go now to the medical center because people started showing me, look at my goggles. A guy came on a snowboard and said, look at my goggles on your face, because it's like a mirror. It showed me the blood and everything. I said, oh, it's a bit too much blood. Took the snow, put it on. And then finally, I persuaded my son to go. I said, okay, we had enough. Let's go. After half an hour about, we came to the medical center. They treated that. But what I do from mindfulness practice, you don't think about pain. You just focus on your breath and you try to be present. And it's not a problem, really. It was a little bit sensitive when they treated it with solution. But then I said, well, would you like to stay here? I said, no, I will go home. And that was my best ride from Ruapehu to Hamilton in a car. Because my wife said, I will drive. I said, no way. Because I will be in pain if you drive, because I will be focusing on pain. Once you focus on pain, your pain increases. If you focus on something else, you be mindful and present, your pain disappears. And I drive in one go without stop. I didn't need coffee because I had so much adrenaline in my blood after that accident. So it was a very nice ride. I really enjoyed driving a car that way. And yeah, when I came home, of course, that was swollen, and then it was a little bit less comfortable than driving. But what the example shows, if you mindfulness helps a lot with actually reducing pain, so you can deal with quite intense pain by doing mindfulness practice. So and you can integrate practice in many different circumstances of your life. Okay. MBCT, mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, or the main principle of that therapy. Let's look at the time. We'll probably need to skip a few slides. The only difference here between MBSR is that it was focused on relapse prevention from depression, because people usually recover very well after mindfulness intervention, but the problem is that they get relapsed after that. So it actually teaches people to not to identify themselves with their thoughts, and this way to prevent depression from relapse. And I think the final, to finish the lecture, I have this slide with 4 measurable attitudes, what people practice. People contemplating on these 4 measurable attitudes when they do a compassion practice. Sometimes compassion practice is included as a component of a mindfulness-based practices. And in this case, people try to contemplate with wishing having these 4 attitudes for everybody. May everyone find joy and the sources that bring joy. May everyone be spared from pain and the sources that bring pain. May everyone always be happy and never tainted by any kind of pain. And may everyone live in a state of balance, free from obsessing over wants and rejecting dislikes. That is the ultimate, the final one is the ultimate balance of homeostasis, what we are looking for in the medicine. That is a physiological state which is implicated from health sciences as an optimal state of health. And remember, what you desire and what you have, having that balance will make a difference to your life. Okay, let's take in home message. Psychology of health and happiness is about achieving the right balance. And physical balance is related to mental balance. Mental balance can be achieved through mindfulness and other meditation practices, results in physical balance and reduces stress and enhance immunity. Physiological disorders are just extremes on the continuum, or psychological disorders are extremes on continuum when the balance is lost. So when balance is lost, we have anxiety and stress and other things. But once we have a balance again, we find it again, we're on a stable ground. The same way distress can take over if physiological balance is lost, if we have health problem. Always strive to maintain the balance by means of mindfulness.